Hi, good day. My name is Jax and welcome to Belucci Studios. In today's video, we are going to be looking at the basic elements of a music production studio. The very first recording that I ever did was on a PC. Now this happened at around about the time that a good friend of mine moved up to Johannesburg from Cape Town. And while he was here, we got in touch again, we became acquainted again, and we started playing music together. And he he saw that I had a sound card, he knew a little bit about Fruity Loops, and he asked that we try recording something. I plugged my guitar into the computer's sound card. Now this was a very basic sound card that had a microphone input and a headphone jack. So I plugged my guitar into the interface, the sound card, and we had Fruity Loops installed and we good to go. We started recording and it was the most horrendous sound I have ever heard. I don't think I've done anything that sounds that bad since. And that was the very first time that I recorded audio. At the time we didn't know much. As a matter of fact, I didn't know anything about recording audio. I had no idea about what goes into it, how a music production system actually works. I didn't even know about music production systems as such. And in today's video, I would like to cover the basics of a music production system. What you need to know, how signal flows and all of that kind of things. But this will be very basic. If you are like Jonathan and I at the time that I tried to record into my sound card and you don't know much about the process of recording audio, then this video is definitely for you. Let's get into it. So audio can enter your recording system in one of two ways. It will either be in a digital or in a analog format. Let's first look at the analog format. With analog recordings, you require a transducer of some sort to get that sound into the audio interface. The three types of commonly used transducers that we have are microphones, magnetic pickups, and piezoelectric pickups. Microphones, I think we've all in some way, shape or form must have had seen one. And the microphone is a transducer, and what a transducer does is it converts energy from one form into another. In the instance of recording audio, it would take the variations in sound pressure level, capture that and convert it into analog electrical signals. The microphone can be placed in front of a singer, it can be placed in front of any musical instrument that produces sound. It can also be put in front of a guitar cabinet or a guitar amplifier. So if you have an instrument, if you have something that produces sound and you want to record that, you can use a microphone. And that microphone will then, as I said before, will take the variations in sound pressure level and convert that to analog electrical signals. The second commonly used transducer is the magnetic pickup. Magnetic pickups are used on electric guitars. Electric guitars also have steel strings or metallic strings, some form of metallic string. The way in which a magnetic pickup works is that you'd have the magnetic pickup on the body of the guitar in various places, and then you have the steel strings or the metallic strings going over that magnetic pickup. As the string vibrates, whichever axis it vibrates on, that results in variations in the magnetic field. Those variations then in turn produce analog electrical signals. Those signals are then sent via the instrument cable to the audio interface. The third commonly used The third commonly used transducer is the piezoelectric pickup. The way in which the piezoelectric pickup works is that firstly you need to understand that it's a contact pickup. Thus it would need to come into contact with some part of the instrument that vibrates. In the case of a classical guitar or acoustic guitars, these pickups generally could be found on the soundboard close to the bridge. So as the bridge vibrates, those vibrations are picked up by the piezoelectric pickup, and those vibrations are then converted into an analog electrical signal which is sent via the instrument cable to your audio interface. The second type of input that your audio interface would accept is your digital signals. Digital signals and these digital signals would be in the form of MIDI. Thus you have your keyboards, you have electronic drums, you have pad synths, and all of those kind of instruments that utilize MIDI. If an instrument does utilize MIDI, it then also has the option of either sending out an analog electrical signal or a line level signal or a digital signal. If it's the analog signal, that line level signal will be sent to your audio interface to the line level input. If you are looking at on the digital side, there's one of two ways in which your digital signal can be transmitted from your instrument to your computer or your audio interface, and that would be via MIDI. So the MIDI signals are sent then either via your MIDI cable or via USB. If it's via MIDI, that would go to your audio interface. If it's via USB, that would go straight into your computer's USB port. So thus far we've looked at what happens from the source, where you capture the performance, and that performance is then either sent via analog electrical signals or as MIDI input to either the audio interface or to your computer. Let's look at the audio interface. On your audio interface you have a number of inputs. Let's look at the analog inputs first. So with regards to the analog inputs, your analog inputs are then your XLR input, or your microphone input, your instrument input, and then you have your line level input. Each one of these inputs has their own impedance. The lowest impedance of the three would be your microphone, next would be your instrument, and then the highest level input of the three would be your line level input. Now what you need to remember is that you cannot insert a instrument input into a line level or microphone input. You can't insert your microphone input into the line level or the instrument input, and the same goes for your line level. So it has to be line level input, line level. So if your source is outputting a line level signal, that line level signal needs to go into a line input. If your source is a instrument that is utilizing an instrument output signal, that instrument output goes into your instrument input on your analog interface. If you are using a input or a source that outputs a microphone level signal, then that microphone level signal needs to go into your microphone input. And when you do that, you have impedance matching, that you are matching the impedances correctly, and there will be no problems. That also incidentally is why my computer's sound card didn't work, because I inserted a microphone, an instrument input, the guitar, into a microphone input. Thus there was an impedance mismatch, which resulted in a really horrible sounding recording. Right, now that we've discussed those three, what happens then? The next thing that happens for those inputs are as follows. With your microphone, your microphone also has a microphone preamplifier. When you plug in a a source, one of your sources, into that microphone input, so a microphone output. So in other words, if you connect your microphone to your microphone input, that signal will then also go through your microphone preamplifier before hitting your analog to digital converter, your AD conversion. For your instrument input, once your instrument signal comes into your audio interface, it goes straight to your A to D converter, and the same thing also happens for your line level input. That's the only input source the only one of these inputs that really has something special to it would be your microphone, where your microphone has a preamplifier, and that is, I'll discuss microphone preamplifiers in another video. So we've looked so far at these three sources. Once these three sources analog sources come into your audio interface, the next thing that it is, in the case of the microphone or your microphone input, is your microphone preamplifier, and then after that all three of those signals would then hit your A to D converter, your AD converter. Once it hits that AD converter, the AD converter converts that analog electrical signal into a digital signal. So that's what analog to digital conversion is. It takes that analog signal, converts it to a digital format. We've also discussed earlier the MIDI, where MIDI could be sent to your audio interface. If your audio interface has a MIDI input, then it can accept that MIDI input. If it doesn't have, well, then you'd need to connect your MIDI device directly to your computer. At this point then, you have your MIDI signal that's already digital, your analog signals that have already been converted, that then needs to be sent to your computer. All audio interfaces have some type of connection some type of connector that allows your audio interface to be connected to your computer. So your USB connectors come in 4 flavors. There's the oldest type USB, which is type 1, USB A. Then there is one that is slightly that came after that, which was USB type B or USB type 2, and then we have USB type 3 followed by USB-C. So that's USB A, B, type 3, and USB-C. Then we also have another type of connection would be Firewire. Then we have Thunderbolt 1, 2, and 3. We have an audio over IP, and there's a whole host of others. So your interface would have one or more of these outputs, and you can then connect your computer to your audio interface using whichever connection your audio interface allows. Thus, it becomes important when you're buying an audio interface that you ensure that your computer supports that particular output. So, looking at the ways in which you can connect your computer to your audio interface, I'm not going to get into all of the specifics, but as a rule of thumb, if your audio interface has USB, then your computer needs to have some type of USB. If your audio interface has Thunderbolt, then your computer needs to have some form of Thunderbolt, and you need to ensure that those two are compatible. I know that with Thunderbolt, generally speaking, that's not compatible with USB, so you couldn't really you might not be able to use a USB adapter. You'd need to check with the manufacturer of that device to determine what your options are. Okay, thus now we have all our signals that are, as you're capturing your audio, all of those signals are now in your audio interface. Once they have been converted to that digital format, then they will then be sent over that connection that you have between your audio interface and your computer, and that connection is a digital connection because everything is now in the digital form. Once it's passed through your A to D converter or your MIDI signal has come in directly, then everything is in digital format and it is now ready to be sent to your computer. On the computer, this is now where you are going to need a DAW of some sort, and this DAW is spelled DAW, which stands for Digital Audio Workstation. Examples of a DAW would be Pro Tools, Reason, Cubase, Nuendo. There's a whole host of them. You'd need one of them. What then happens is, once that signal is sent to your computer, your DAW picks up those signals. If you have connected your MIDI device directly to your computer, your DAW, if it can identify that device correctly, it will then be able to capture that digital information. At this point, your DAW will then send that signal out. This signal, processed or unprocessed, that signal is then sent back to your audio interface. When the signal reaches the audio interface, in order for you to be able to hear what was recorded, that signal needs to go through the digital to analog conversion. That's sometimes they refer to it as a DAC. So once that digital signal gets to the DAC, that signal is then converted to analog electrical signals. Remember that when the audio signal came in, when you recorded that vocal came in as an analog electrical signal. It then hits your digital to analog, your analog to digital converter, and that becomes then digital signal. On the way out, the process is reversed, where your digital signal hits your digital to analog converter. That converter then sends out of your audio interface your analog electrical signals. The next thing that will happen then is that analog electrical signal will encounter a transducer of some sort, and that's an output transducer. So on the analog side, on the input side, you have a transducer, and on the output side you also have a transducer. So this would be, this is another type of transducer. This is an output transducer. So in your reference monitors or your studio monitors, that as a transducer, as that audio signal, analog electrical signal hits that transducer, the transducer then converts that analog electrical signal to sound pressure level variations, which is what we perceive as sound. The same thing happens with your headphones. Now there is something that I would like to just clarify, because you might come across some systems where there's your audio interface, the part that is connected to your computer, where that just has digital inputs. It has absolutely no analog inputs. In that instance, you'd find that your analog to digital converter would sit somewhere else. You might have a microphone preamp, line level input, or instrument inputs, and those inputs would then have your analog to digital converter, and that would send that digital signal to the audio interface that's connected to your computer. Your DAC can also sit on a separate device from the audio interface that is connected to your computer, and that would be where your those devices would then contain your DAC, digital to analog conversion, and that is what your speakers, your headphones would need to be connected to in order to hear the signal. So there are some devices that has some audio interfaces, that most audio interfaces have the digital to analog and analog to digital converter all in the same unit. There are some of the more higher end devices where your interface with the computer is completely digital, and your analog to digital converter would sit on separate devices, and your digital to analog converter would sit on other devices, and then you would have that flow. Then that flow becomes, it's more important to then understand that there's analog to digital conversion that happens somewhere, and what happens with that signal flow, as far as when the signal is completely digital, when it is completely analog, when it is completely analog on the way in, when it's completely analog on the way out, what kind of connectors are required for your devices that have your DAC, what kind of connections are required for your devices that hold your A to D converters. And yeah, it's a music production is extremely, I think it's one of the most exciting fields to be in, and especially if you like your toys. There's quite a bit. There's a lot of variations. Some devices have multiple connections to your computer, so that you can have Thunderbolt USB, or you can have Thunderbolt. The one that I have has Thunderbolt. It has audio over IP, and it has Pro Tools it has HD connectors as well for Avid's Avid set of devices. So there really is a lot, and the more you understand about the signal flow, what the A to D converter is, what the D to A converter is, the more you understand the different types of digital connections, and I've only covered one thus far, or two. The connector between your computer and your audio interface, that's digital, that's a type of connector, and there are several there. Then there's MIDI. In addition to that, there's light pipe or Toslink or ADAT. There's a whole bunch of others as well. So the more you understand what these different things are, the more you understand it, the more empowered you will be, and you don't need to feel scared about whatever is out there, all of the different interfaces. You don't need to feel overwhelmed about it, because at the end of the day, everything will either be in the analog form or in the digital form. Each of these can be manifested, or can be you'll find different types of connectors that handle each one of these things, but at the end of the day, it's all either analog or it's digital. And if you begin to understand that, then beginning to understand how the different connections work, how signal moves around in a system, when you can do a particular thing and when a particular thing is not allowed, then when you understand all of that, it becomes less scary, and it becomes more fun. Your gear purchases become an obsession. So there is a lot, and if you are just getting into music production, there's a lot that you have to learn. But it's safe to say that if I can learn these things, if I can understand these things, then I believe anybody can, and you definitely can. So I hope that this video has helped, and I hope that you have learned something, and that your journey will indeed just go from strength to strength. I have a lot of videos coming up in the coming weeks and months, where I will go into more detail about this stuff. I will also start introducing gear reviews to my channel. So there's a lot coming, and I hope to see you guys soon. Thank you so much for watching, if you are still watching, and please do like, share, subscribe. If you have any comments, if there's anything that you feel I've misstated, anything that you would like to clarify for me, leave it in the comments below, and let's grow as we are all part of this audio community. Thank you so much, and have a good evening. Cheers, guys.